Across the island, many Montrealers can no longer afford basic needs in their own neighborhoods. What's the reason for this? Gentrification. Gentrification is when wealthy families or individuals move into low or lower income areas and begin to change the character of the area by improving housing, which in turn increases property value and leads to more wealthier businesses coming to the area. It's also when capital takes control of housing and corporate forces, such as developers, which systematically force governments to divest from housing in order to create a money-based competition for access to cities. As a result, people who've lived in neighborhoods prior to these changes are displaced. The neighborhood of ParkExtension, also known as ParkX, has been a victim of intense gentrification in the last few years. One of the main driving factors is the University of Montreal campus, which opened beside the neighborhood in 2019. The campus does not provide student housing, leaving students to find apartments in ParkX. Nuzat Niaz, an organizer for Comité d'Action de ParkExtension, a human rights group based in the neighborhood, said that as a result of the new Université de Montréal campus, community members are now being displaced.
Students, they're not like those families. They don't rent an apartment for a long term. We maybe like it's for a few years or maybe like 1 year. So it's like every time like they get new tenants and then they get the chance to their rent increase.
ParkExtension isn't the only neighborhood victim to rising housing prices and rapid changes. Cartierville has become Montreal's least expensive neighborhood to rent at an average of $1,297 per month. But just 2 years prior, the same apartment would go for an average of $1,008. This is an increase of $289 in just 2 years. Verdun had a steep average increase of $429 in 2 years. In Villeray ParkExtension, there was an increase of $140 within 2 years. This may not seem like much in comparison to increases ranging from $300 to $400, but for a neighborhood noted as the most low-income neighborhood in Montreal, every dollar makes a difference to community members. The neighborhood of ParkExtension is also home to many newcomers to Canada, but language barriers have given landlords the ability to take advantage of tenants.
They just send them a paper like, okay, you see, you have to sign it. People, they think like, okay, the landlord is saying something and they have to do it. So they sign it and finally it turns out that like they told them something else. But that was basically a notice of eviction, a notice of rent increase. Oh, now what will I do? Now where will I go? So we receive this kind of cases every day.
Landlords don't always wait until a tenant leaves to increase the rent. In some cases, landlords will rent evict a tenant.
It's always been vulnerable people that have been super prone to, like eviction and the symptoms of gentrification. But now it's families, elders, students, people living alone, everyone, even up to like middle-class families. The evictions are out of control and the tactics are just more and more fierce, really.
Tenants can complain to the Tribunal Administratif du Logement, but often this takes a long time. It's emotionally tiring and taxing on tenants fearing the results.
There are so many loopholes, there are so many conflict of interest with judges, there are so many issues. The agents at the TAL seem really overwhelmed, not super able to help people. They often refer tenants to housing committees. We're not lawyers, we provide housing information.
Rising rents can create a domino effect, leading to not only residents being pushed out, but independently owned stores that sell lower-priced items being unable to stay in a neighborhood with rapidly increasing rents. This then makes room for corporate-owned chains, such as Provigo or Metro, to replace locally owned stores. As a result, prices can be much higher, which makes grocery prices inaccessible for communities already grappling with rising rents.
We still have some spots that are here where you can find affordable produce, but I do think it's becoming more rare and rare, and I definitely know that more and more people use food banks.
In Verdun, 20% of the population lives on a low income. On Wellington-L'Église Street, an area which has experienced high amounts of gentrification in both commercial and residential properties. 26% of the population is living on a low income.
It's been a long time coming, like the Promenade Wellington, especially after being voted the coolest street in the world. We've seen so many local stores close down.
We know that gentrification is increasing across the city and pushing people out. But what can we do about it?
We were fighting for space. This is like 700 Jerry. We were fighting for that space so that it can be turned into social housing. So finally, like city has like bought it and they approved it for social housing. So this is like one of the major victory for us.
Municipal governments will just scapegoat, be like, oh, this is a provincial matter. We can't do this because the province, and oftentimes this can be true, but oftentimes it's not true. There is a lot more that they can do in a lot of cases concerning bylaws. Like, for example, there are other boroughs that have pretty strong bylaws having to do with subdivisions and enlargements, which is a way that people are rent-evicted. So in Verdun, we don't have that. And the bylaw that exists is like substantially watered down, making it not strong. This is something on a municipal level that could have been done, as a preventative measure, and that we're still very much hoping to see. So if people want to show up at City Hall and talk about these things, this is absolutely important.
These tips help us know how to apply pressure on local governments to seek change and how to organize for better housing rights. But ultimately, the way we view housing needs to be reassessed. Cooperative housing has been successful, offering affordable housing in many places across the country, including city centers. But individual home ownership and property speculation has put affordable housing in the permanent minority for the last few decades. With profitable housing running a monopoly over our housing system, renters need to get organized, and homeowners need to look at housing as a human right instead of a profitable asset, so we can have affordable housing for all.
Is your neighborhood experiencing gentrification? Let us know below in the comments. Visit the link in bio to subscribe to our newsletter to stay up to date with our content as soon as it releases.